You understand? That's the spiritual world. And they let them in, and it was an experiment that went bad. And when they brought them back down, it created an artificial thought form. Artificial thought form, which is a cosmic energy in the heavens. And all documented. So, basically, we have C.W. Ledbetter, which is a big-time Mason. Big-time Mason in the Theosophical Society that's started by Mame Blavatsky, this white girl that knew that she better get her white people into some occult sciences because by the time 1914 come around, they would be gone. So C.W. Ledbetter and Annie Besant, which is a woman that was in the society. Number two, she's a 33rd degree Mason, as well as Blavatsky, a 33rd degree Mason. Now, if the beast can put a woman in Masonry, y'all better talk to them doggone whoever, Prince Hall or whatever, and say, look, if we're going to get to the new eon, even though that's a social organization, we need to do something by putting the women up into the Masonic order. See what I'm saying? Put them in. Because if the white girls can be up in here, 33rd degree, then ain't no sense for the black woman to be walking around here with calling herself an Eastern Star. He's got to have a man present each time they do some stuff. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, Ledbetter talks about this artificial thought forms, and he talks about this time during Atlantis. We use the word Atlantis as a code word for just say black people ruling the universe at this time and ruling the earth. You see, we'll say that this thing going wrong, for sake of argument, we'll say around 6,000 years because we can trace this white boy back to this time. So let's say in Africa instead of Atlantis, because number one, when Plato heard about Atlantis, he heard it from the priest, and when he heard it, he only heard it was a place that sunk under the water. And it was called Atlantis. And he took this back to Greece, and they had 300 books been written on it ever since. From that little bit of information. You understand what I'm saying? But anyway, Ledbetter, when he's talking about Africa, or let's give it a new word, because we don't even need to use Africa at this time. Let's say the black man's dominion, or the black woman's dominion. I want to put the woman in there. At this time, he said that this Aryan race was created at the time that this artificial thought forms are created on the astral plane. Check? You following? I want to try to make it simple because it's real complex. Anyway, these white boys are the actual Atlantean period, or the African period, or the black man's period. This race of people were created, and they were created on a lunar region. In this lunar region, when you go into the astral planes of the heavenly worlds, the lowest level of the lunar region, the lowest level is the lunar region, because we got higher worlds. Okay, I'm going ahead of myself. Just keep that in mind. Now we're going into Hemmitt. Going back to this TAMA-HU. Now all of a sudden, when we get Hemmitt and we get the dynastic period, we got them uniting the land with some barbarians. But what happened was, going back to the set, now let's jump back to the set time, because I'm trying to tie all this into you. During this set Typhon period, after he falls, somehow he falls and he becomes not a blue-black god, but he becomes a mutated white god based on that papyrus that I just gave you all, and I'll give the rest of you all some of that in a minute. He becomes a white god. So what happened is, they have to unite the land from a group of barbarians, not black people. Black people were once gods. Well, if black people were once gods, how can you be in Hemmitt uniting the land from some barbarians? You understand? And then we have Libya that's inhabited by the same barbarians, which we call this TAMA-HU, which is just created white man. You understand? Now, then all of a sudden, when the land is united, and they kick them on out and push them on back up into Europe, we will say that this is the Great Migration period, because we know that those black people, when it did come Ice Age time, they just got the hell on back to Africa. They didn't stay around in no ice and mutate. That's a lie. So they take them on back up into Africa. Now, when I get into this stuff, I'm going to show you some actual stuff that the white boy said. I promise you, I'm not even going to use a black scholar. I already used Diop at the beginning. I'm going to use with the white boys. So it won't be no lie. We don't have to say that all that nigga there is trying to make up some stuff about the white man being the devil from some black hocus pocus strange mythology. I'm going to tell you all what the white boys are dealing with in the occult realm and in that white masonry of the Illuminati and all the stuff that you've been wondering all the years. I wonder what they're teaching in there. You see? But they unite this land. And when they unite this land, all of a sudden, the mythology before then has turned into Set Typhon being the prototype of the devil, right? Being the prototype of the devil, and also he's being the adversary of Osiris, who is a black god that later on becomes the judge and the prototypical god of humanity at this time, along with Ra being or whatever. Don't want to go into the Egyptian mythology too much because I want to explain this point. So all of a sudden we got this fall. We got Set being this god of that Osiris and Ra and Ptah is all fashioned behind, and now we have him as the prototypical devil. But are they talking about myth? Are they talking about mere mythology? Are we talking about a scientific people that did everything, that went around the world, both in space and both on the earth? Now they're not going to sit up here and argue over stupid mythology. Oh, you worship Set. We got the Set worshipers that I explained in my earlier video all about Set worship going on in Hemmitt. They were talking about some type of practice. Well, what kind of practice? They were talking about, all of a sudden, we have the Hyksos period, which is the first invasion. And then if you get the books, you can get, let's see some good books. All the Hyksos were Set worshipers. Well, wait a minute. If these people invaded from the outside, how could they be Set worship? See, there's some funny hocus pocus things that's going on right in Hemmitt. You see, the uniting of the two kingdoms was among black people. I'm setting you up for the kill. A group of people is practicing a certain ritual, and a group of people is practicing another certain ritual. You see, the so-called Atlantean people, if we trace it back, had this power to create and make gods and be God. But this same power that they had, they could either use this power for good, or could they use this power for evil. So obviously this Set Typhon, this evil religion, and talking about this evil deity, has got to be talking about some type of metaphysical practice. More than it is, we arguing over statues and deities that you say this is the devil. In principle, they're talking about practices. Now we get the Hyksos period, and all of a sudden it's saying the Hyksos are people that worship Set. Well, you can get this in Massey's Book of the Beginning, Volume 2, or you can get this in a new book by Donald Redford called Egypt, Israel, and Canaan. Book called Donald Redford, new book, as well as a lot of sources. It said that the Hyksos worship Set. Well, that's funny, because the Hyksos, most of them, even Martin Bernard traces them all the way back to Palestine. He traces them back to Palestine based on a document that's coming from Manetho, and later on repeated in a hostile article with the great Josephus in his books, The Histories of Josephus, talks about an article called Against Apion, which was an Egyptian priest. But anyway, we trace them back to Lebanon. Well, if this is an Egyptian god, what would the people in Lebanon or Palestine be worshiping an Egyptian deity? Is this all holes in it? Okay, now this Hyksos people are in, and they're worshiping Set. But it's funny. Both a guy out of London, England, by the name of Kenneth Grant, as well, who is a Masseyite, and both Gerald Massey in Book of the Beginning, Volume 1, in the Egyptian origin of the Hebrews, as traced from the monuments, historical piece of work, said that it wasn't just a takeover by some adversaries. Number one, we got this vast land. Number one, it's the only civilization going at the time. And yet we're going to have some doggone nomads that come in, 10 strong, and take over a whole Hemmitt. It don't make sense. But even Dr. Ben said himself, he said, look, he said that there's something that went on in that period that they're very ashamed about. And so they wiped it all from the monuments. They were good with it. They wiped this stuff from the monuments. So what happened is, like what Massey is saying makes a whole lot of sense. What you have had is you had two priesthoods going. You had the Set worships, and you had the newly Osirian religion worship. And the Set worshippers took over right there in Kemet. Remember now, in this dynastic period that we are all fascinated about is actually the decline of the black man and black woman being God. This is the decline period. You see? They say a little bit after the third dynasty, they never got it together again.